Forget Movie Show. My name is Deshaun, and today I am here to review Renfield. Now, Renfield is a movie I've been looking forward to since I saw the trailer. Now, I saw the trailer for this movie while I was going to see Cocaine Bear. If that just puts things in perspective about how crazy this movie's going to be, probably. Now, the big selling point of this movie is obviously fucking Nicolas Cage playing Dracula. When you see that in the trailer, you're like, this is gonna be batshit crazy. It's Nick Cage, he's playing Dracula, the movie looks gory and bloody, it's a ridiculous premise. You're like, this movie's gonna be insane in the membrane. And in fact, it very much was. So the movie itself, Renfield, is about the main protagonist, Renfield. Dracula's assistant. Now, if you've ever seen some of the older Dracula movies, the name might sound familiar to you. Renfield was one of his minions. You know, there's some other ones, but Renfield was one of his minions. He was the one eating bugs and shit, which is something they kind of put inside of the movie to be kind of callback to that, because Renfield in the original movie, the old movie, like the 1930s movie, you know, old Dracula movie, Renfield in that one ate bugs, but he just ate bugs to be creepy. Here, he eats bugs for a purpose. But anyways, Renfield has been serving Dracula for the better part of 90 years. And, you know, he's been Dracula's familiar. He's been getting him meals, he's been doing his bidding, he's been doing his cleaning, he's been Dracula's everything. Butler, tailor, like he's Dracula's guy. But he's starting to feel guilty about being Dracula's guy, and he's starting to feel like he's in a very abusive relationship with Dracula. And the funny thing about this movie is, for all this stuff going on in this movie, and there's a lot going on, some of it not so good, some of it very good. I'll get to those in a second. But I just gotta really praise the movie for its depiction of an emotional, abusive relationship. Often, you know, when we talk about abuse, and they talk about abuse, and even in films, and even often on television, and like even in commercials, they often talk about the obvious physical abuse. Now, we've all seen that, have heard that. We've all had people in our family or friends who have been maybe physically abused. And we know that that's a serious matter. But quite frankly, majority of abuse, you know, majority of abuse is mental. It's verbal. It's really that kind of abuse. That's the majority of abuse in the world. Well, in America anyways, I believe, even more than the physical, is the verbal and the mental abuse. And this movie depicted that it's crazy. It's insane that this movie, inside of it, contained a real, thorough depiction of mental verbal abuse of a couple or two people, codependent, of being abused by a narcissistic, you know, dominant partner, so to speak. It's the way Dracula treats Renfield, and Nicolas Cage does an amazing job at this, just gaslighting and just browbeating him into the ground, just guilt-tripping him. The way he does it, victimizing the victim. He does it in such a way, Nick Cage does an amazing job, he does it in such a way where it feels real. It feels like something you've probably seen, heard, or gone through. Where someone is like obviously being taken advantage of, where two people are in a relationship, and one person is obviously taking advantage of the other. One person is obviously treating the other like dog shit. But then when the other person finally grows a pair and finally kind of figures this shit out, like, you know what, I'm not gonna take this anymore, I'm gonna do something. What does that person who's been treating them like dog shit do? He makes them feel bad. He makes them feel like it's their fault. They make themselves feel like the victim. It was so beautifully done in the movie that it's funny. This movie is so crazy and over the top that they have this real, actual core of a legit premise with this whole relationship between Renfield and Dracula. It really does feel like an abusive relationship. Like a legit abusive relationship. And like when it happens and you see it, you're like, how is this working right now? That's partly due to the amazing performance by Nicolas Cage, who actually came to play. Now, it might sound crazy, but Nick Cage came to act today. Now, don't get me wrong. He got some over the part, Nick Cage, yeah, shit going on in this movie. But it's less than you think. It's sporadic. It just kind of happens and it's gone. For the most part, he is really committed to playing this asshole, narcissistic, Dracula. This asshole, narcissistic, intimidating, kind of scary, because whenever he's on screen, you're never quite sure what he's going to do. You know what, there's a bit of it, Nick Cage? There's a bit of an Omni-Man. Well, not Omni-Man, shit. Homelander. There's a bit of a Homelander vibe to him. And in The Boys, how every time Homelander's on screen, you're kind of like, I don't know what the fuck this dude's going to do, so you're kind of tense. Same thing with Nick Cage's Dracula in this movie. Every time he's on screen, you're like, is somebody's going to die? I don't know who, I don't know why, but I get the vibe someone's dying. You know what I mean? Like, that's just the vibe you get. It's intimidating. And he's also kind of funny, and He's so arrogant and egotistical. He's not even barely keeping up with the times. He's just been sending Renfield out to do all this shit. So Nick Cage is awesome. The actual main cast people are great. The actual main cast are good, especially Renfield himself. He's very relatable. He's very sympathetic for him. There is one problem with his character that's still hard for me to overcome, but I'll talk about that in a little bit. But the main cast are great. They're all funny. They all got great chemistry, particularly Renfield and Dracula's characters. Those characters and the actors playing them did a fantastic job, and they had great rapport. You really felt that shit. So that's great. The movie is consistently funny. There's always something happening that is very funny. For instance, there's a fucking scene at the beginning of the movie that just made me and Seth laugh out loud, where there's a subplot with this crime family, and one of the crime family's sons was like in the beginning of the movie, got caught up by cops, and they were like, oh, maybe that's not the guy. And he just screamed his name out loud. That's the way he did it, and the timing in which he did it, that was just hilarious. And this dude's throwing cocaine at cops, saying, I don't have cocaine, as he throws cocaine at cops. Like, there are multiple bits in this movie that are straight up funny / hilarious. So you're gonna get a consistent laugh in this movie. And I thought it was a very funny movie. Also, when the actual fights went down, they were gory. They were gloriously gory. I mean, at a certain point, you see a man get beat to death with another man's arms, and it's like, this shit's bad shit crazy. Man gets beat to death with another man's arms. It took quit hitting yourself to an entirely different level. Okay, now that's out the way, all the positives, really. Nick Cage being the #1 positive. If you're gonna see this movie, see it for Nick Cage. The movie does get off the rails. First of all, that entire subplot with the crime boss is it's super weak, and it's kind of just there. And then the whole subplot with the semi-love interest is like, while I like her and think she's funny and kind of like what she's doing, I didn't need this entire subplot about her father being killed and about the entire department being... I didn't need this whole subplot. And it's really played out, and it's very predictable. It's very predictable. Even the ending, to a certain extent, while it was clever and fun, was a little bit, anticlimactic. I'm not going to tell you how it ends, but it was a bit anticlimactic the way it ended. Now, they did set up a sequel. They clearly set up a sequel if they wanted to do one, but that ending was pretty anticlimactic. And which kind of brings me to my biggest problem is, I still have a difficult time, and granted, it's a funny movie, it's a ridiculous over-the-top movie, so I don't really take it that seriously, but every time I want to feel bad for Renfield, you really sit back and go, well, it's hard to feel bad for a man who abandoned his family. They mentioned it multiple times. He abandoned his family to follow Dracula. He's killed multiple people over 90 years. He's fed multiple people to Dracula. Now, granted, you could easily say he's only doing this because Dracula's been fucking with his mind and fucking with his head and getting him to do things. And you can also say that, because in the movie, he's only feeding Dracula bad people. In the movie, he's feeding him bad people. So, there's an argument to be made that throughout the entirety of his 90 years, he was just feeding Dracula bad people. Maybe. It could be. But we don't know that for sure. All we know is, in the middle of the movie, a little bit near the end of the movie, it's mentioned that his fingerprints go back 60, 40 fucking years, and he might be and he's involved in the murder of multiple people all over the country. And it's hard for me to feel sympathy for a man who's done all that. And it's hard for me to just get over it. Yeah, sure, you stopped Dracula, you stopped him from doing his big evil muhaha plan, but you still are responsible for him being alive long enough to kill this many people in the first place. So it's something that's never really, they bring it up, and I appreciate the movie for bringing it up, which is why I'm softening my opinion on it, but still, it's still something that's really hard to get over for me. Anyways, I would give Renfield a solid 7.5. I had a fun time with this movie. This movie does have a lot of problems, with the main problem being that entire subplot with the cops, which takes up a large chunk of the movie, so it's hard to really ignore it. Also, Renfield's thing, it's hard to really get over the fact that he's technically responsible for the deaths of probably hundreds of thousands of people, and I'm supposed to just forgive him because he grew conscious and did the right thing now. The ending was a bit anticlimactic. But anyways, thank you guys for joining the Comic Game Movie Show. Please like, subscribe, and I will see you guys on the next one. Goodbye.